on this subject of kind of macro lower highs, we've got this 95K region for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin can get above it, this would be a kind of macro lower high that really counts for a lot if Bitcoin can break it, because it, really resulted in quite a vicious sell-off. I mean, from this level, the immediate sell-off was, it took about a day, and it fell down by 14%, which is a big deal. But down to the low, it was more like a 20% drop, which in and of itself is kind of large, especially when you consider that the total drop that we've seen in this market was 32%. So really, a lot of it happened right here, which I think is quite important. This was a $20,000 price drop for Bitcoin here. Compared to from the all-time high, it was a 35K price drop. So we this high looks very, very dramatic, but actually I would argue this one is like borderline more important. Purely because of just how much of a sell-off it resulted in. You know what I mean? It really prevented the bulls from doing something amazing there. So reclaiming it is a nice big sign that actually we're making a lot of progress. Now, in terms of reclaiming it, it's going to be a challenge, right? Kind of getting above this level is fine. I don't think it should be too much of a challenge, and it's more or less just an empty gap. I can't speak. It's more or less an empty gap between this level at about 91 and the bottom of this box at about kind of 95, 96. As we can see throughout Bitcoin's entire price history in this range, it really just kind of, moves pretty quickly. We can draw a couple of lines to illustrate that, because I think it's always quite useful. And I'll go ahead and make these. What color really stands out? Probably red, right? I think that was probably the right idea. And if we just kind of keep on trying to draw these lines, what we're going to see is, for the most part, there are exceptions which I'm going to ignore, but for the most part, on the way up and on the way down and on the way back up, just as you can see from here, we're basically moving throughout the entire price range, which is, this spans like a solid kind of 4%, and we're doing it quickly. We're not really messing about when we do this. We're all the way up and all the way down, and it almost always happens as quickly as it happened on the way down. You'll move up as quickly on the way up. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think you get me. And there's so much evidence of this. Look at how many examples of this actually happened. This is what I would call a really very, very nice fertile trading range. There's a lot that you can do in this range. But obviously the problem is, you do get these wicks, and they can be what really kind of screw you over, like here, right? Like you could have had that expectation over here and you would have gotten paid for it. But on this one, you would have just been entering along, to just get stopped out straight away. So, this is just the risk of doing business in these markets. That's not surprising or bad or negative in any way. It just is what it is. If you're aware of it, then you can be a shark and kind of make some money off it. And if you're not aware of it, then you'll just be handing liquidity over to somebody else who's better than you. So we gotta be really, really careful of that. It's totally fine to lose a little bit of money every now and then, or to even lose money regularly. There's no point kind of making conclusions on if it's good or bad, because it's really about your strategy. But the bottom line is, if you can't even see that stuff coming, then you really are in trouble. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to be a degenerate with you guys here, and we're going to go ahead and just look at this on the minute time frame. First of all, just to kind of digest what this chart is doing, this is the entire move. It looks pretty healthy, pretty good. And then here is the Bitcoin top right here at about 91.6 so far. We are inching up, trying to break that high right now, so we'll see how that works. And S&P stays where it is. So if the S&P does end up kind of getting a nice big move from here, that's probably going to be what gives Bitcoin the juice to move up. But we are in, like I said, a little bit of that kind of weird decouple situation right now. So who knows? It could just kind of go up on its own. But we're going to keep this planted right here on the right-hand side of the screen, so you can kind of keep seeing what's going on like a degenerate, watching the minute time frame. We're just going to do that for a little bit just because it's entertaining. Pardon me, one sec. I might sneeze. Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of this stream. I told you guys I was sick like a week ago. Turns out I'm not. Turns out it's allergies. I don't really believe in allergies. I've never had allergies in my whole life, but apparently I have allergies now. So I don't know. I'm gonna take care of this, but that's why I'm being like that. And I'm fine. Like physically, I'm fine. I've been going to the gym and cardio and everything, but yeah, just just I don't know. But here we are watching this on the minute time frame here. We'll keep an eye on this and see how this continues to behave for Bitcoin. But like I said, pretty empty range for Bitcoin, right? It shouldn't be too hard once Bitcoin can kind of get above this high right here, which is also this high right here, more or less. Actually it's a little bit higher. It's more like up here. But if Bitcoin can get above it, then we're pretty solid, right? Like we're kind of good to go. I don't think there's going to be much kind of stopping Bitcoin from going up. Of course, a little bit of consolidation is always healthy. It's always welcome. It would help the market kind of hold on to its gains. But we're also coming out of this was a multi-month kind of shitstorm. Really, this was nearly multi-month. This was 56 days of just being in a shit place. And not really doing anything. And so, yeah, you can expect volatility to return back a little bit quicker. And again, if we just kind of keep it locked to this price range and understand what Bitcoin can do here, it could be a really quick rise back up to this 96K range. And that is where Bitcoin topped out. But again, on the idea of Bitcoin reclaiming this high, there's a lot of resistance here, right? And to me, it's not good enough if Bitcoin just gets up to like 97. It's not high enough above that high yet, right? Like that could totally still come back down and it would just look more like a double top. So, I need to see it cleared, with a little bit of margin, with a little bit of headroom, right? And, your 1% level is going to be sitting at about kind of 96K, but your 3% level, which I really like, actually sits above the box entirely at about 98. So, that's actually the level that I'm more interested in to kind of tell me that, we're kind of done with this high. It's a really important high. It's a dangerous high. It's borderline scary because of how difficult it's going to be potentially to get above it. But all of that means that if Bitcoin can get above it, then, we're basically, locked in for new all-time highs at that point, right? It's going to be, I think, quite hard for the bears to seize control of the market again if Bitcoin can convincingly get above this high. Now, if it doesn't convincingly get above this high, or if it gets rejected somewhere in this box, then, the bears are very much still in charge. And so we've got to keep that in mind. Here's Bitcoin just dumping just a little bit here, not really, feeling that price range just yet. But, as we know very, very well, this is a market where the more you test these levels, the weaker they're going to become. And then, you have a higher chance of kind of breaking them the subsequent time that you come back up. So if Bitcoin kind of fully retraces and does this, then I'm going to be expecting it to break out a little bit more. And if it does it again, then, that probability just kind of keeps on going up. Which is, really useful, I think, to be able to keep in mind right here in these markets. So, this is an important price range for Bitcoin, but with some pretty heavy resistance above it. Is it a bull trap, or did we go past the key level? You can form a bull trap anywhere, right? We could be in a bull trap right now. More likely, it ends up being a bull trap if we kind of top out over here. That's kind of the way that I see it. A bull trap is really anything that kind of gets bulls in, that traps them in longs that they don't want to be in, and then the price kind of reverses. So, you can make a case for a bull trap happening here just as much as you can make a case for it happening here or even above. It doesn't really matter. But for me, I just think that, the chance that we get, a bigger kind of macro rejection is a lot higher in this price range. And, we can just really, it's so easy to see why, based on all of the kind of consolidation and reversals that, we've seen in this price range here. So breaking this, I think, is going to be a really, really big deal for Bitcoin if it is able to do that. But of course, we have to discuss the downside. I know it's not fun. I know it's not, exciting at a time like this, but that also is what makes it easy to get carried away. We are in a resistance zone, right? And ultimately, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. If the S&P 500 is what ends up dumping, then it might still take Bitcoin out of this range. Especially if the S&P starts breaking, significant important levels, then, it's really over for Bitcoin potentially. And so if we take this onto the 4 hour and kind of talk about what that might look like, it's like I said earlier in the stream. First of all, you've got a really nice support level down here, so I won't even be too worried. But if we do lose that level, then we're kind of back in this sideways range, which, I don't really want to see us returning to. It's not a nice place to be. And, we haven't really traded here ever in history other than, the candles that you see on screen right now. This is like the only price history Bitcoin has ever had here. which makes it a little bit harder to analyze, a little bit harder to have confidence in, levels. But still, we can have that confidence. We discussed this long opportunity on this YouTube channel just in like the second most recent video, and just look at how well that ended up playing out, right? So you can still definitely do stuff, but again, if you're coming back down, and especially if you're losing this support level now, I wouldn't really expect these interim support levels to be in play, and I would probably be looking at the low 80s. But again, at that point, what we're doing is we're sweeping above so many highs and then just falling back down. To me, it just kind of indicates that we would have to return back into the 60s, and it would probably be pretty bad. So, it's good news in that, we're kind of finally doing something, but it's actually really bad news if this thing ends up turning again, in my opinion, because to sweep highs like this and then still mess it up and come back down, you are really, going to struggle to give bulls a reason to keep on buying. Because, at that point, you could kind of read between the lines and assess that, Bitcoin might come down to significantly lower price levels.